Okay. You can unmute yourself now, Hissy. Hiya.
I'll get that.
Okay, so welcome. It's me, Jeff Godless Scummer, here with Hissy from Hissy's Hideaway again. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of Asterix and the Normans. As some of you who may have watched last week may have realised, we had a little bit of a problem with our stream that YouTube didn't particularly like something. So let me get this off the screen a second. But so we're going to be finishing off today. So I think we're just going to do a kind of a too long didn't read kind of version. If you want the full thing, you're going to have to go back, watch last week's stream, which is back up, thankfully. So short version, we had Vital Statistics nephew had come to the village, was a bit of a pampered boy from Paris, and they basically sent him out to there to toughen him up a bit, you know. That was the sort of thing. At the same time, you had the Normans, aka, you know, the Norse, the Vikings, whichever way you want to call them. We went through all that last week about the names of them, so we don't want to repeat ourselves too much today if we can avoid it. So we've got to the point where now the Normans, as we remember, they were searching because they did not understand the meaning of fear, and that was what their big quest, to go out and try and understand the meaning of fear. Because there are people that knew no fear, and they came across Vital Statistics' nephew called Just for Kicks, who was really afraid of them. So they kidnapped him, took him away. And, you know, because they think he can help us understand the meaning of fear. And so we got to the kind of point where Asterix and Obelix were, I suppose, they come across the guy's chariot and were looking for him. So I'll just put that up on the screen there, Hissy.
Yeah. It would help if I had my glasses on. So
yeah, okay. I've got it at 200, so...
Yeah.
So where are we? Yeah, I think it was somewhere down... down the bottom of this.
I think we're on the corner page where they were talking about when I bash someone, I bash them.
Oh, okay. I think I'd gone on to the next page just after we'd so maybe I'll start from the top of this page. Maybe I'll start from the top of this page then. Because I think so yeah, so they got they've gone, Asterix and Obelix, going out into the forest to do the usual thing, sort of pick mushrooms, hunt a few boar, and if there's any dumb Romans that happen to come across their way, they're going to get a good hiding as well. And they notice Just for Kicks' chariot. Now, I think it's a funny little bit down here. I'll just try and where is it? Now, if you remember, Obelix had been teaching dogmatics to sniff out menhirs. So you see,
it does seem to be working.
It does seem as if dogmatics is doing that.
I love the insinuation there that menhirs somehow grow the same way you'd hunt for truffles or something.
Yeah, I love it too. Oh, it's great. Well, are you getting a compliment there, Hissy?
Thank you, Jen. Much appreciated. Yep.
Cool.
I do too, actually.
Yeah, it is a nice top. I'll say that. I'm just going to get rid of a tab that I didn't need. So, and they've realised that. I guess they've realised that. That he's been kidnapped or something, probably by the Normans. So they're going to go. They and I love this thing down the bottom of Obelix saying, "You mean they wanted a souvenir and they found just for kicks in my men here, and they took just for kicks? These Normans are crazy."
Yeah, a tiny little bit. Everyone's crazy to Obelix, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't eat boar and want your own menu, you're mad to him.
Yeah.
It's quite nice. He's equal opportunities about how he reacts to people.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. Do you like menus? Do you like boar?
Yeah, that's pretty much Obelix in a nutshell. So, meanwhile, now at the Norman camp, we've got him here, Chief Time and a Half. Love that name. And his soldier there, Nescaf. You gotta love somebody. You gotta love some of these names.
You do, don't you? You Time and a Half, Nescaf. Riffraff.
Yeah.
So that's quite fun. So I do love the last 3 panels on this one. They just amuse me. He's terrified. Go on then, frighten us. Like, not quite how that works.
He's like, he's terrified of them, and he's like, go on then, frighten us. He's like, I said, frighten us. They've come a long way to learn the meaning of fear. So go on, frighten us. And he's like, and like this is a good one. Because he said, look, I can't. I'm afraid of you. He says, how can I frighten you when I don't know the meaning of the fear? Question. I always think you said we didn't quite get onto this last week, but you said that there's kind of a bit of a philosophical kind of element to this. This whole thing. I suppose it's that kind of question. If you can't feel fear, are you truly? Is there really courage? It's I suppose one of those questions, isn't it?
It is one of those things. I think more with this, what interests me is it feels almost like a linguistic joke. Can you have a feeling that doesn't exist in your own language? So we've all heard, going back, it must be 3 or 4 years now, there was a big thing in a lot of communities about the Danish concept of, and I apologize for mangling this, was it hygge? Spelled Hygge.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And the entire, it's warmth, it's family, it's community, and there's just no English equivalent for what this word encompasses.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting to me looking at it, how many people identified with it. But it does say a lot, because if you don't have a word in your language, can you appreciate the concept behind it? So, for example, I don't know if this is like a myth or if it's real or it's one of those internet things, but it highlights the point fairly well. I've heard vague stories of like a tribe in the Amazon who don't have a concept of left and right because all their lives they're taught the compass points, the cardinal points on the compass. So they don't have a concept of left and right, which is a relative direction to where you are. It changes if you turn, whereas they don't they don't have this concept, and it's the idea of, and that I think is what this is, the idea that the Vikings don't have a word for it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a word for it, can you do it? And that's a very deep philosophical question.
And sorry, in answer to Nerdy's question, no, they haven't been.
The Romans never stopped being crazy nerdy.
No, not in there. Not in this. They don't.
Wear a helmet if you ride a scooter in that city. Seriously.
Yes. I have been there. I can testify to that. So so he's asking him about fear. He says he's like, yeah, I'm in a cold sweat, my head's swimming, my stomach's churning, and the guy said, it's flu. Fear's the flu. So he said, did you ever see anyone with flu by Odin?
And again, it's this linguistics joke, isn't it, of flying and flu and fear.
Yeah.
And the flight of fear. And this is, he thinks they're crazy. And so he gets tied up, chained up.
He's chained up, and he's fearing he's never going to see Leticia or Paris again. But they're like, and they've kind of threatened to throw him off a cliff top tomorrow if you don't, demonstrate your powers or whatever and fly, because they've taken that as fluids from fly as well. So it seems like they're I mean, in a way, it seems like the Normans, they're on a bit of a quest for knowledge that they don't kind of understand these things or whatever. They don't understand the concepts.
Again, it's that philosophical question of if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you've got there?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of weird because you wouldn't associate Asterix books with philosophical dilemmas, would you, really? But it's an interesting one to get into.
You wouldn't, but there's a lot of it in this, especially in this particular one.
Yeah.
That, I said it last week. It was nice to be given the opportunity to think of these questions in this context. Because Asterix is great, and it's funny and it's a laugh, but it's on a level it's humour first and foremost, and it's the occasional history joke.
Yeah,
it hasn't delved into philosophy so far, but this is interesting that they've done that. Yeah,
it's just more they've it's just interesting that it is a philosophical question, isn't it? If it's like can there be courage if you don't if you're unable to fear anything? Are you truly courageous? I mean, that's
yeah, I mean,
it's questions like that.
It is one of those things, and it's very much courage, bravery, all these concepts, they're all relative, and they're all words that we have that when you come down to it cannot be quantified without using the term to describe them.
Yeah.
Or using their opposite or their antonym to describe them. You can't describe courage without fear. You can't describe knowledge without ignorance. You can't, or intelligence without ignorance. You can't do that because it's a concept that's entirely created around its opposite.
Yeah.
And the problem is not that these Vikings don't have a word for fear. The problem is that everything they do, because they don't have this concept of fear, is. There's no concept of, well, that was brave.
Yeah.
So and that's, I think, what this is going for. These Vikings do things, and there's never any sense of self-preservation as such.
No, and we'll get onto that. We'll get onto that in a little bit, actually. Funny enough. So, and oh my word.
Yeah. On a lighter note, don't forget your duty-free cigarettes.
Yeah. I know.
That's just a classic joke. I think it's a nice little pop at the British there. I think
that is very much a pop. I'm sure that was I'm sure that was. I mean, that was going on, I suppose, up into the early 2000s. It's probably still to some degree today, but
yeah, pretty much until they limited it. I think they've limited it to like 1,000 cigarettes you can have now.
It was it was but you could get people coming back with tens of thousands of cigarettes and selling them off on the cheap, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, they always knew someone who'd gone on holiday to Spain or France.
Okay.
Just one of those
Jen,
things growing up
hold on.
British.
Jen, you're gonna make me hungry for a takeaway.
Jen, stop it! I haven't eaten yet today.
And Nerdy says, "Yep, I remember. I've been on one or two of them."
Yeah, you get your £1 ferry trip, and you take 2 t-shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, and then the rest of your suitcase is empty. But when you come back, it's full, and it's backy, and it's cigs, and it's bottles of spirits.
Yep.
I'm not old enough to have done it, but I'm old enough to have known people who did it.
Yeah. The booze cruises, as they were kind of known.
Yeah.
So they've obviously now they've been sort of Obelix once again trying to get hold of the magic potion, saying he says, no, honestly, he said the effects have worn off on me, and he's going to pretend to uproot the tree, and he's saying, I can't. And he still manages to uproot it without even trying. Poor Dogmatics, he loves trees.
Mm.
So
that is a really adorable image of Dogmatics there. Yeah. I don't know how far you can zoom into that. You probably have to go to about 600 at least.
But it just looks
so miserable.
Yeah. And then he's getting a little pat on the head, and like, Dogmatics, I won't do it again.
See, if you told a lot of people, if you just shared that to a lot of people, you'd probably fix global warming.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think you probably could. It's like Dogmatics doesn't like. Yeah, I think that should be like a poster for the climate change movement sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So, right there. So now they're going off to the Norman camp, saying, "Look, we want to have a word with your chief, and explain to them." Where is it? Well, sorry, I just got lost a second here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And
no plan survives contact with the enemy, Obelix.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't know what the plan is.
Thankfully, they don't normally. This is probably because of the superhuman strength. Strategy is not something. Certainly, it's not one of Obelix's strong points. He doesn't, it might be a little more for Asterix. He's a bit more clever and cunning, and so they're getting these great big Norsemen charge at them. You know how this is going to go. You know how this is going to go when people get into a fight with Asterix and Obelix. This is what's going to happen.
And the beauty of this is they still don't learn fear from this.
No, they keep coming back for more. In fact, what happens is they go off, have a bit of their apple brandy or whatever, and they just seem to be revitalized. So Asterix and Obelix are kind of thinking, oh, they must have their own version of the magic potion.
Yeah, a bit of Dutch courage. Quite literally, I think.
Yeah.
From where they're from. And then off we go with the Romans.
Roman patrol going through the forest here. Oh, hello. Sorry, lost my page a second. There we go. Let's go over. Let's just say the Pax Romana's being somewhat disturbed here.
This comment, just if you go back up, I love this one. It's his first patrol, so he's been sent to run errands.
I might be back on the last page, I think.
Yeah, and this is a classic kind of screw with the apprentice joke.
Yeah.
My first patrol, send him round to the Upshur for a handful of half Unica halls. My dad's a Sparky, or he was. So I grew up hearing stories like this. And the general idea is you send the apprentice for something that the reasonable application of common sense towards the name would make them realise that it's fake, but they don't stop and think.
Yeah.
and they just do it.
Like
the favourite ones are for a long stand at the hardware shop.
The long wait. That's the classic one. Long wait. The tartan paint.
Yeah,
that sort of thing. I actually
my dad's favourite one was skyhooks.
Yeah, skyhooks. There's loads of them. Glass hammer. Those sort of things.
Yeah, those kind of things.
I actually can tell you a quick story that not long after I'd turned 18, there's the place I was working at, and they sent me for a long wait, and I went to the pub on the marina instead. And my boss walked in, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm done for here, because I'm drinking when I'm supposed to be working.
Yeah.
I'm done for here. And so he said to me, what are you doing here? Why aren't you working? He said, well, the guy sent me over to the chandlery for a long wait. He said, so I went and asked him for one, but they kept me hanging around or whatever. And they said it was going to be at least 45 minutes. So I thought, sod it, I'll have a pint while I'm waiting. And he was like, fair enough, bought me a drink. So I think that one worked out quite well.
That's how you get around that joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that one's interesting. I do love the name of the Roman in the next one. Hear that, consensus?
Yeah.
And the one thing, yeah, that's interesting. Again, it's Oleginus. Those the Curians actually they are these names. Reasonably,
I couldn't quite read that one quite right. I'm just zooming.
I don't.
Oleginus, yeah.
Oleginus. That to me sounds like an illness of some sort.
More than likely.
And then Decurion the 10th, or the
Yeah.
So reasonably, I mean, I wouldn't want to name a child either, but there is historical accuracy to just numbering your kids.
Yeah.
Not to get too political, but Moggy did have a point. Naming his kid Septimus or Decimus or whatever he named him.
Yeah, yeah.
Did have a point, because the Romans did that. They literally just gave the kids numbers in some points, and a lot of them, for example, especially the daughters, what they'd do, all the daughters would end up having the same name, the mother's name.
Yeah.
But your first daughter would be Julia Major. And then your next daughter, because I've picked Julie because that's a well-known example. Next one will be Julia Minor until the next one comes along, in which case that one becomes Julia Minor, and the second one becomes Julia Seconda. And they're just Julia the first, Julia the second, Julia the third.
Well, it's a bit like who is it? The boxer George Foreman. All of his children are and he's got a lot of them, by the way. They're all their names, both his sons and his daughters, are all George or Georgia or Georgette, or they're all variants of George. All of his sons' names are George Foreman, but it'd be like the only thing that they're probably a lot of them the time they go through their middle names or whatever. But I don't know. It's like a weird little thing he decided to do for some reason, but.
I'm not going to comment on anyone else's ego. I think we'll leave that without comment, because it was the 21st century, so I can kind of understand it back then because that was the naming convention. But when it's not, it's a bit. I still find this thing of Americans naming father, son, grandson, whatever, all the same, and then numbering them. Like, if you're not royalty, you don't have a number after your name. That's weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, I know people who are like, Walter the Fifth or, Peter the Fourth. So unless you're a pope or a king, that's just odd to me. I don't know about you, but I find that really weird.
I don't get it.
We occasionally have senior and junior.
Yeah.
You got John Senior and John Junior or whatever. But you wouldn't then, if John Jr. had a son and named him John, you wouldn't call him John the Third.
Mm.
He'd just be Junior.
Yeah, I've known it to happen like as an official name sort of title, but not. No, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So what the Romans going back to their camp to alert them that there's something going on the beaches here, and there's some fighting on the beaches, Centurion, and and I like this. I'm gonna just you've got this guy here. Let me just zoom up. This guy here who he's very, very keen to impress the Centurion. This is the new boy, and let me just zoom in the Castor Ace, aren't you? Eager Beaver, yeah. I like it. I
like it. It's a nice little. Again, it's that little Latin joke, isn't it?
Yeah. Which is some of the funny little, which are the funny little things on this. And so they're going off down to the beach, see what's going on, and they come down. It's the Gauls, there's Asterix and Obelix, and the Normans still having this punch up every time they go in. They get a good thumping from Asterix and Obelix, but they come back for more. They don't know the meaning of the word fear. Even though you'd think by now they would have got knocked unconscious. I'd say, yeah, pretty tough breed. I'll give them that.
I think it's also they keep getting knocked out, waking up and coming back.
Yeah.
Which is, I suppose, Obelisk must be enjoying himself.
Yeah. He's about to enjoy himself a little bit more here. Because the Romans come in, it's just like this. Would you kindly whack?
This is brilliant. This is a perfect example of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah. What's about to happen here? Come on, man. They're attacking. Yeah, this is the little eager beaver. Goes charging in. And Obelix then gets him a paintbrush slapping for like being rude, interfering. And then hands him over to the Norseman. Yeah, what about me? Do you like to go? Oh, can I? Yeah. Split. Oh, yeah. Poor guy.
And then the Romans.
Yeah.
How political do I want to get with this next little
thanks to these reinforcements, the battle rages harder than ever.
We're the peacekeeping force.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of examples of this throughout history.
Yes.
It's very rare a peacekeeping force is there purely for the sake of peace. They're usually there for some form of narrow self-interest.
I just read Hopswatch is in the chat, so
yeah.
So
hey, Hopswatch.
Very enjoyable stream with him earlier. So please go and check out the series I've done on the. I've been on this channel for all of them with the Torben Sondergaard series. So very and the Chieftain series kind of coming out. This boring sauce and peace. It's like, it's disturbing this. Obelix says his boring cream sauce. It's like
Carif.
Yeah.
What a name. Again.
Yeah, mine's called Carif. Was it Let Go of Telegraph. So these are all plays on like the AFs, aren't they? Like,
Yeah.
Who are you? I'm time and a half, conqueror and chief of the Normans. And they're just laughing at the names here. And he's like, Asterix. And Asterix is almost like, you hurt his feelings. Don't forget our schoolish courtesy here. And he's like, what is, you can see this, you kindly tell me what you want. So, well, actually, we kind of, we kind of want to ask you the same question, actually. So,
this one amuses me. The idea of swapping recipes, going to war for recipes.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a tiny little jab at like the spice trail.
Maybe. Yeah.
Possibly,
Possibly.
all of that for some pepper and some tea, honestly.
Mm.
I keep a straight face as I say that, but yeah.
Mm.
And then we've got something important to ask, but first clear the Romans out.
Yeah, Romans go back to their camp. Kind of what usually happens to them when they run into the Gauls, but then they've been beaten up by the Norsemen as well. So and you'll be getting a report in triplicate. This is a little callback to a thing where they were carving everything onto marble or something, which isn't quite true,
In times like this, you're probably looking at, for documents like that, possibly a wax tablet.
Yeah.
So it would be a bit of wood, essentially, with some wax melted flat over it. And they'd have something resembling a pen, and they'd carve it into it. And it would fold like a book. And you'd seal it with more wax. And you'd take that would be your message. Then the person who got the other end would just melt the wax again, flatten it out, and write the message back. Yeah.
So just highlighting Hops Watch's comment. That's kind of where they're going with this. It all plays on Olaf.
Yeah.
It's so that's kind of where they're going with this. Let me get rid of that one. So meanwhile, back at the camp, so you've kidnapped just for kicks as expert. It says your expert knows it all, and we shall leave him once he's taught us all he knows. Well, he's an expert in dance, and he can teach you about. I can teach you about rock myself. That's a callback to, again, a joke from last week. Don't want to repeat yourself too much over the over what we went through last week. But kind of the budding little rock musician is just for kicks. So, I just end up repeating ourselves, and because of obviously what happened last week, I don't want to keep repeating everything we did last week. Or otherwise this will be about a 3 or 4 hour stream, and I don't think even myself and Hissy have got the inclination to do that today.
Yeah. This one's just. I like the idea of them arguing over who gets to be hostage. But before they get there, you've got this. Love the idea that the kid from Paris, the only thing he knows about is dancing.
Yeah.
That's the only thing they presume he could possibly be an expert in.
Yeah. That's obviously some internal humour there, I think.
Yeah, a little bit of internal humour going on.
And let's stop it. We didn't need it. I'm dancing around full. And then he's like, like you sounded just like Cacofonix. That's like, that's too much. Do you mind paying attention to for a moment?
So those two, honestly, they really are like a pair of siblings.
They are a lot of the time. They do are. I mean, they're the best of friends, and they are inseparable. But they're like cats and dogs at times as well. I mean, normally, because Asterix obviously he. Let's be fair here. Asterix is the smarter of the two when it comes to him and Obelix, and sometimes I think Obelix gets a little sulky, over things. But Obelix is likable though. He's very big-hearted. He's his typical sort of big-hearted brute, isn't he? Really, so he's a big tough guy, but he's kind of a big softy at the end of the day.
Yeah, he is a little bit. I do like the comment at the bottom that kind of highlights that bottom of this page. After they've argued about who's going to get to stay hostage and try the local cuisine. People always take advantage. Everyone takes advantage of my weakness, he says, as he accidentally kicks a tree down. And then, poor Dogmatic.
Oh yeah, poor little boy. But the thing is like, the thing with this going on is Asterix has a plan here. He's thought of a plan, so he's going to teach them the meaning of fear. And one of you stays here as a hostage, and yeah, normally you'd think they'd be arguing over which one of them wouldn't get to stay as a hostage, but it's going to be Asterix, and Obelix is sulking about it.
I mean, they've got good alcohol and good food. Being a hostage isn't going to be that hard.
I actually should say something about practice. I mean, certainly in later periods, I mean, there's definitely a lot of documented things of this happening with in the sort of should we say dark age, what we kind of think is dark age Britain or whatever. With when we had like the Great Heathen Army and the Danes and the Norse invade. A lot of the time when peace deals were kind of met, exchanging the hostages was quite a common practices that they.
Yeah.
It was kind of like it, and generally they tended to be sort of high up people kind of thing, you know, aldermen or jarls or whatever. And so it was kind of seen as an insurance policy kind of thing, you know. But generally they were kind of treated. Generally, I think they were treated kind of well. I mean, there were probably were the occasions when, from what I understand, when and I'm not entirely sure on this, so do not take this as gospel. I think the Jarl Guthrum actually may have slaughtered some hostages in Wareham when he broke a truce with Alfred the Great. But I'm not again, and I'm not entirely sure that happens, and a lot of that may be, you know,
propaganda and
revisionist history.
I don't know about sort of that era. I do know because I did a module on it at university. Sort of the era, sort of Crusades and onwards, sort of what we call the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
There were kind of, I would call it a precursor to the Geneva Convention. There were rules of engagement and rules of how to treat hostages, particularly high-value hostages.
Yeah.
Who were either captured in war or traded for whatever reason. And hostages were essentially treated like honoured guests. That was the point.
Yeah.
Because they were worth more to you alive than dead. It was
bargain. You're something you had to bargain with as well. You know, it was they were. I mean, unless you were just going to be, you know, completely duplicitous and like break a treaty or something, you know, and the hostages were no longer of any value to you whatsoever. But it doesn't necessarily mean in that case that necessarily they'd be killed.
I mean, there was always, you know, you hear stories. I know there were a few with, again, the Crusaders, but later as well in the Tudor period, a lot later. And so on. Taking a hostage as part of a battle was kind of par for the course. You went into battle with the expectation of either I'm going to die, I'm going to be taken hostage, or I'm going to leave with a lot of money because I'm going to have looted the bodies of the people I've killed or taken hostage. And it was kind of.
Well, I seem to recall it's was it after the Battle of Agincourt or whatever, and Henry V executed a whole number of French nobles that were captured, and that was seen at the time as being like
a war crime.
A war crime by the standards of that time, even though there wasn't really there wasn't anything like a Geneva Convention, but by the standards of the time, that was bad form. Let's put it that way.
No, the reason I bring this up is because the chivalric code is not about how you treat a woman and whether you bow and scrape and hold the door for her. If people understood what chivalry was, that expression would die in a hole.
Yeah.
And it irritates me because chivalry was not about in the early period. Chivalry, it wasn't courtly chivalry. It was chivalry was essentially a code of war.
Yeah.
It was how do you treat your hostages? How do you fight? What's acceptable and what's not on the battlefield?
It was a kind of a code of honor, I suppose, and there was, I suppose, numerous kind of societies had their own
Yeah.
versions of this.
So
About
was
the way war, the way war should be conducted, kind of thing. Like, obviously
yeah,
you can think of, like, in Japan, the Bushido code amongst the samurai and so on. It's a similar sort of thing. Okay, again, highly
and
romanticized in, like,
in
modern fiction, but that
and
sort of,
it's even sort of the chivalry originally was things like we don't sexually assault nuns if we're passing by the monastery.
yeah.
It wasn't, oh, that pretty lady's going to give me a flower.
Mm.
It was, we leave the priests alone. It was, we don't murder women and children.
Yeah.
There is such a thing as non-combatants, and we leave them alone. It was, if we take a hostage, we treat them well. We don't torture them. So, which is why I call it a precursor to the Geneva Convention, because it's got a lot of very similar ideas.
Dave, yes, it is, and please don't jinx us.
Please don't jinx us. Please.
And no, we can't have two. After what happened to Dave on Friday, we can't have two blooming jinxes this week. Poor guy. You didn't see. You know, if you saw the clip, Hissy, I'll share it to you later. I don't know if you saw what happened, but
I didn't know, but this comment from Ring kind of summed it up. A woman told me chivalry is dead, so I challenged her to a duel. Chivalry is alive, but the woman, which kind of sums up what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And it's war. It's not, any of that. There was a concept of courtly chivalry.
Yeah,
and it kind of took the same name because it was
that's what
the domestic virtues of the people who would have practiced
courtly chivalry, courtly love, those kind of things. And I said courtly love, not courtly love, before anyone says anything. These it's sort of social constructs of the time. And I think the later things we said, that kind of courtly chivalry was almost in itself was a romanticized version of an earlier period.
Well, there was, because there's records of, and I don't know who it was off the top of my head. I studied this like 7 years ago. Cut me a bit of slack, please. But there's sort of stories of older knights, if you like, soldiers, as things were switching from the old style of chivalry to the courtly style, who were looking at these young knights and were basically horrified, kind of the boomers of their day, of that's not chivalry. That's prancing about like an idiot in a costume kind of thing.
I mean, there's always been. I mean, I think there's always been. I mean, and sometimes I think a lot of the time when we look historically, a lot of things. Sometimes when you have culture, a lot of the breakdown comes when you have cultures that have never really come into contact with one another before, and they may have their own codes and ethical codes about how things should be fought. Sometimes that leads to things that, like one side would see as a war crime and the other side would not.
So again,
I mean, there's a story, and again, please do not take this as gospel, because it's been a long time. I mean, I'm talking, this is about 15-20 years ago that I read this, and I can't verify it right now. And if I'm wrong about this, please somebody correct me. But during the Zulu War, there was a kind of after the Battle of San Luana, there was a lot of British soldiers that had been kind of cut open in a certain way, which the British just obviously viewed as savagery from the natives, kind of thing. That was their attitude, and it was actually quite a high, for something to do with the religious practice. It was a high mark of respect if you understood their culture.
And it is there's a lot of cultural
but
issues.
please do not take that as gospel, because I said that is something I read 20 years ago, and I cannot verify its authenticity on the spot right now.
I mean, it sounds reasonable. I mean, again, my area is the Romans. You know, when the Romans would go out into
And I'll highlight I'll highlight what One Ring's just said as well.
Yeah, Aztecs and conquistadors.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the Romans. It was they'd go out into Britain or into Germany or wherever they went, and they had this understanding of, no, you fight a war in a phalanx. This is how you fight a war. So there was almost this undercurrent of the way the Germans or the British fought, which was a very guerrilla style of warfare. Of there being some kind of dishonor in it.
Yeah.
Of it being too chaotic, of it not being entirely right.
This goes right. I mean, this goes right into the modern period as well. I could think of Vietnam. Vietnam's a very good example. That the Americans went in very much prepared for a conventional war, and that's not what they were given.
They got a guerrilla warfare,
they found a kind of warfare that they would not. Mainly because I think the general in charge of the Americans, Westmoreland, he was a World War II general. That was what he knew. He was used to conventional, and I those who've ever read the book The Art of War by Sun Tzu, I got the feeling that Westmoreland never read that book, but Vo Nguyen Giap not only had read it but understood it perfectly.
Yeah, because he understood how to execute his enemy's weaknesses.
And there's kind of a story at a time when, you know, the obvious. I wouldn't say that. Should we say surrender? It wasn't a surrender by the Americans, but a peace agreement to withdraw. So it was whatever that was signed. There was a very, very bitter, I think, U.S. colonel who happened to be at the point says, you never beat our army on the field of battle. You do know this, right? And the North Vietnamese officer responded and said, that's true. He says, but it's also irrelevant.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know. I think we've gone way off topic here. Hissy.
Yeah, no, way off topic. But
it was an interesting conversation. And I think, again, it could be a very, maybe codes of honor historically could be a very interesting topic for a stream at one time, I think.
I mean, just on the back of your Vietnam comment, though, just before we move on, there is an entire academic kind of historiography of American strategists, military strategists looking at Vietnam and trying to argue that they won on the basis that they won all the battles.
Where is it? It hasn't shown up in StreamYards yet, but your other half is quoting Sun Tzu in the. So.
When that pops up in StreamYard,
and that pops up in StreamYard, so I'll highlight that. But
yeah, and the problem is at that point, with all due respect to any Americans who may watch this and have a personal experience of it, the Americans didn't understand their own force because they were, you know, they had quite a few conscripts in there who didn't even know what they were fighting for.
I would obviously, because I know this is something that's still in living memory for some people. And, you know, if you are of that sort of generation or whatever, I was purely talking about that from a tactical and not just tactical, but a philosophical base of how the both sides approached warfare.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what I'm getting at as well, because
it's not,
you don't know your own force, because this is what Ring's saying. If you know yourself and know your enemy, you will always win.
Yeah.
The problem is
that's that there. It's one of the most famous quotes by Sun Tzu.
And the problem was for the Americans, because I've studied this in depth, the problem was the disconnect, the generational disconnect between the top brass and the soldiers on the ground. Who didn't quite communicate. And then there was the disconnect of the top brass think they're fighting a conventional war of attrition, i.e. dig in the trenches and shoot over the top.
Or fix battle, more to the point, fix battlefields with front lines.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that was always said about Vietnam. There were no front lines as such, as
there were no
we
front
would
lines.
understand them.
You know, you kind of had the demilitarized zone and stuff, but
Yeah.
and
It's,
then you had soldiers who had to follow the orders from the top brass to fight the tradition, and had to work with what the top brass gave them to fight the traditional war, but knew that that wasn't the war they were fighting. And there's a great scene in Forrest Gump when they first arrive in Vietnam, and he shows up and he's ready to go, he's fresh-faced recruit, and the first thing the lieutenant says to him, "Keep your socks dry."
Yeah.
And then says to him, "Just wait it out." And
wait it out.
His attitude is, because he knows that the people who are not on the front line with him,
they know they're in a no-win situation, you know.
And the thing is, a conventional army will never ever win against a guerrilla army. You just won't. It's the same mistake the Romans made when they went up against Boudicca. It's the same mistake, historically. The Germans against the French resistance.
Ultimately, the reason that the Iceni rebellion was beaten is that the Britons swapped tactics and fought them on an open battlefield, which in that time era, that no one was going to do the Romans in on an open battlefield.
If they'd have carried on with guerrilla tactics,
I'll say one more thing about this before I really have got to drag it back to what we're supposed to be talking about. But I've heard it often put in the terms of two strategy board games: the game of chess, which is very much an attrition-based game where you eliminate pieces to trap the other person's king, and the Chinese board game of Go, which is again, it's very similar sort of concept. It's a strategy game, but it is to conquer the most territory of the board using the least amount of pieces possible. And I always think that like say Vietnam, you had the Americans were using a chess strategy and the Vietnamese were using a Go strategy. Would probably be the best. It's an oversimplified way of saying it, but
and I mean, you can apply that because it's such a general statement. There's a lot of historical times you can apply that to, and I would say, if anything, sort of the backdrop to Asterix and Obelix is exactly what that is. The Romans are employing a chess strategy against them, and this little village is holding out because they ain't playing chess.
Yeah.
If you're the last piece on the board in chess, you've lost.
Yeah.
You're the last piece on the board in a game that relies on guerrilla tactics. You still stand a very good chance, and that's the difference.
Well, the people, I mean, generally, the people who had the most success against the Romans were the ones who would fight them in like what we would understand as guerrilla style warfare, and not open battlefields. Obviously, the famous battle of the Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD. Where they were led. I mean, really, the Romans were led into an ambush. I mean, they've actually found the site now. They've actually found the actual site with the archaeological evidence. It's very much they were. They lost 3 legions to Germany, and they were lured into a trap. First of all, that the German commander was someone they thought was on their side. He was leading them into a trap. But he also led them into a situation where they're in the middle of a forest. They can't fight a pitched battle in a forest. Try fighting. Okay, no, Hissy's off screen a moment. Okay, Hissy's had to take a call, I believe. So I think what I'm going to do is drag this stream kind of back to where we're supposed to be with this. Now, as Mathpig would say, moving on. Now, Obelix has gone back to the village, and the man he's looking for is Cacofonix, as Asterix has whispered something in his ear, and that he wants to use Cacofonix for whatever it is his plan is. And The problem is he's looking around for Cacofonix, and kind of finds out that Cacofonix, he has. Well, he's going to use dogmatics first of all to try and sniff him out. We love dogmatics, but this doesn't go very well because Obelix has taught him to sniff menhirs out, not bards. Yeah, I imagine you do, nerdy. But but this is the thing. So Obelix has sent here the doggo off here, and yeah, and we're not blaming dogmatics for this. This is Obelix's. Obelix has taught him to sniff out the wrong things here. But Cacofonix has, of course, those who remember last week, Just for Kicks had kind of said to him, "You'd do well in Leticia." I think Hissy's back, is she?
Yep, I'm back.
Yeah, Hissy is back. Okay, so he's realised that I know where Cacofonix has gone. Let's go after him. We'll find him.
Yeah, so he's running away to the big city with stars in his eyes. That's what Cacofonix is doing.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like, and if we know one thing about Cacofonix by now, is it's like in his own mind, he thinks he is this great artist, and just the people around him are not just are just barbarians who are just not worthy to appreciate his great art. That's kind of what Cacofonix basically. Cacofonix is 50 BC's version of the character Stuart Lee plays on stage, I think.
Little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I know you're not a big fan of him because we talked the other day about that,
Yeah.
Hissy, but that's kind of that. And I will say that cat on stage persona is not what he's actually like in real life. But it's that kind of thing of, if you're not getting the jokes, that's not my fault. That's your fault for not being bright enough. Yeah, it's that kind of thing,
Which I think this comic book in particular, these stories do just on the right side of for me. They give you the comedy, they explain it where it's needed, but there is still a little bit of intelligence required.
There's the odd little joke, and again, sometimes you can read into it what you will. You can think, are they saying something? And sometimes, if you do know a little bit about history of the period or a cultural sort of reference joke, you'll get it. Sometimes, as we've discussed in the past, sometimes for good, sometimes for the not so good, because for reasons Hissy and I have covered before with these streams. So anyway, we're getting back to this Asterix, and he is kind of being he is getting treated well here in the camp by the Normans. So is the hostage.
Yeah,
got his feet up, relaxing, having a bit of food. And Obelix is off in pursuit to try and find Cacofonix. He picks the odd boar off along the way, and a few Roman patrols that are dumb enough to run into him.
Yeah.
But he's on the road to Leticia to catch up with Cacofonix, and comes across this guy with the oxen cart. He said, "Oh, there's a man who was making an awful noise. My oxen stampeded." He said, "Right, we'll track down." And this is the way to the bar. So I'm glad in a way he's kind of teaching dogmatics to sniff out Cacofonix as well, teaching him to sniff out people. And you got the old man on the bench. Now, the way this guy is drawn, he hasn't really come into the books as we've seen it yet, but he's drawn as there's a character drawn exactly like that, who's the resident of the village called Geriatrix, who's the oldest man in the village. And when we get round to geriatrics as well, the big pun with him is he's the oldest man in the village, but he has got for some reason he has got the stunning young hot blonde married to him, and he's not even the rich man in the village. You know,
He's just the oldest.
He's just the oldest man. Yet he has got the stunning, gorgeous blonde with the long legs as his wife, which is a little joke. We'll get into that in some of the later books, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. So,
call that a teaser.
Yeah. I do enjoy the fact that they've got what's essentially a I'm going to call it a service station, and it's the self-service station, which amuses me.
And obviously tracing Cacofonix, and he's saying, "Oh, he's come for it." Guys started singing, and like,
guy caused a riot.
Yeah, basically,
essentially. Yeah. And then, I mean, what amuses me is previous to that, on the previous page, which we kind of skipped over, he's singing so bad he curdled the milk.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
So it does.
He left the horses compensation. So we get onto it. Obelix spots him, and Cacofonix series. He's on his way, wandering to. Notice he's got a set of bagpipes as well here, as well as his harp. So
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I've known that. I think that's the first time I've ever seen him with this.
Yeah.
And Cacophon, he's going outside, and of course, Cacofonix, when he hears Obelix go, I knew it. They can't do without me in the village. Too bad. I've got a career to think of, you know.
But I think Ovi goes singing along as he's walking, and just this, I think Dogmatics just completely. Yeah.
Well, he's Obelix convinces Cacofonix. He's kind of convincing Cacofonix to come back. And the thing that gets Cacofonix is not immediately. He's like, "No, I'm not coming back. You don't appreciate me." But he said, just for kicks is in danger. Now, bear in mind, just for kicks is the young lad is the one who told him he'd do well in Paris, and suddenly Cacofonix is like interested. He says Normans are up to some kind of skullduggery. He says, "Oh, I see. You want me to soothe their savage breasts. Very well, then go on." Why am I suddenly glad that Jen's no longer in the chat? No, I'm joking, Jen. We love you, but I just know Jen would have a bit of fun with that.
I'm sure she would. Yes.
Yeah.
So
nerdy may still do yet. So
yes,
apparently Nerdy's writing fan fiction about this community allegedly. So
I still need the link to that. I've not seen the link to that yet.
Well, I don't think it's done yet. So but he's kept going on about that there's fan fiction coming of our community.
That could be interesting, real person fic. But I do like the idea. He's literally just singing a memory tune.
Yeah. But
I can't get that right.
The thing is, Obelix is convinced him to come back and with him, and Cacofonix has decided to sing on the way. And Obelix has got to bite the bullet here. He's got to bite the bullet on this, and he's like, Cacofonix. He said, and he's decided to say, "Oh, we could do it without a song." You see, Dogmatics is a. Oh, so no. If you want more, he's like, you're gonna have to put up with this, and you want to do an R moment here, Hissy. Where is it? Where is it? Darren, where are we?
Yeah.
Where are we?
Poor Dogmatics. Poor baby. I don't blame him. Poor thing's weeping because of the music. Well, I say music.
Yeah, this is like Basically, I suppose Obelix, Cacofonix, he's kind of like the 50 BC's equivalent of Nickelback, I'm assuming, but
Yeah.
so
So you either love him or you hate him, yeah. So he's turning milk before turning his audience's heads. The animals are bolting. It's a classic one, isn't it? If someone sings and you say, go join the cats, it's that joke taken to an extreme.
Yeah.
And the Normans are getting impatient. They want to see Obelix. They want to see Asterix and Just for Kicks fly.
Yep. So they're back at that, and now obviously things are going from bad to worse, and these sorts of like the chief time and a half is getting a little he's getting a little fed up with this now, I think. So he said, "Go and get the Gaulish expert off the long ship," and so we're going to throw them both off the cliff. He says, I don't know what's keeping Obelix, but you might want to wait a little longer. So I think they're kind of getting to the point where they're getting a bit fed up with them. But first, in the course of science, you're going to fly off this cliff. He's like, wouldn't you rather I grovelled at your feet? And Asterix is like, yeah, cheer up, show these Normans how bravely a Gaul can die. And it's like, you haven't finished their fun yet, There's the cliff.
And then
right, next page. Go on, Gaul, fly,
and then the usual bish bash bosh ensues. Right on the cliff edge. Which is, fun.
They're about to throw him off still, and he's so he kind of agrees, wait, I'll try and frighten you or whatever. I'll try and do something to frighten you. And then he tries telling him a story. A scary story. They just laugh at that. Tries to shout boo at him. That doesn't go well either.
Tries to make funny faces. That doesn't go well.
So he's trying to do anything. And he's having to go, Asterix, you're not being any help here. He's kind
of not, to be fair.
He's not. But we know Asterix. He's got a plan. He that's the one thing about him. He generally has he just generally does have something in the works, I used to I used to scare my little sister with faces like that. Says, your little sister scare a little bit more easily than big barbarians. There we go. So they're bringing out. I love these two names. First half, second half. Take him over to the runway. And he's about to get. They're about once again to get. And Asterix, of course, still got some effects of the magic potion. Breaks the chains. That start fighting. On to the next page.
And just in the nick of time, Obelix arrives.
But finally, we watch this one. Now, obviously, he doesn't quite have the superhuman strength or the experience of fighting. But look at this. Just for Kicks is starting to. I've had enough of this now. He's starting to stand up to them.
Yeah, and he's starting to actually kind of get his loyalty straight.
Yeah.
And get his priorities in order.
Yeah. It's remember, this is the whole reason he was kind of sent here to be there. I think I missed a page here. Oops. I've missed a couple of pages actually. Yep. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. And just in the nick of time, here comes Obelix with Cacofonix. And they bought him. Yeah. Yeah. So they bought Cacofonix here. And what do you think he's going to do for them here, Hissy?
He's going to sing. And this amuses me. Like, if you want to teach people fear, you show them bad music.
Yeah.
So it teaches them, because first, before they learn fear, they have to learn pain, because at no point in this have they responded to anything with any show of pain.
No.
It's like the concept just doesn't mesh for them.
Yeah, they don't get it.
In the head, they come back for another one.
They've got nothing to, like trigger their, sort of sense of fear, which we could get in. I mean, we could get in. I mean, I don't think we should, but we could get into a whole like discussion of evolutionary purposes of fear. It's they're kind of there for a reason.
Yeah, and I do think as well with it, there's no fear of death. So we saw that in the previous one where they were stood at the edge of the cliff, and just for kicks is panicking, and they're joking about just go. There's no sense of I might die. There's no fear. The only thing they know is they're going to die, and they're going to go and enjoy a meal with Odin. That's their entire thing. Which I'm sure there's plenty of religious philosophy in there that we could go deeply into, but I'm going to not. Is it, to kind of just sum it up, is it martyrdom? Is it brave to be a martyr if you believe that when you die, you have paradise waiting for you?
Yeah.
Well...
No, but it can maybe help you overcome a fear of death. Perhaps if you're it's
on that basis though. If anyone promises you paradise after death, ask for proof.
Yeah.
Don't go blindly into any war, because throughout history this has happened. Popes promising crusaders, eternal paradise. And I'm deliberately sticking to historical examples.
There are contemporary examples we can use, but we're not taking too many risks with YouTube after last week.
We're not, but I'm sure you all know what I'm thinking of. And throughout history, it's there. It's the great speech in
and very similar, very similar to like Norse, like Vikings or whatever. The Odin's Hall, Valhalla, is generally where the warriors went who died in battle. That was kind of a lot of the time. That was where the warriors who died in battle went.
Yeah,
and I believe. I believe there was some sort of tradition that they had to die with a weapon in their hand or something. And sometimes there's a kind of sometimes it's a kind of mark of respect, like an enemy. An enemy would put the man's sword or whatever in his hand and hold it whilst he died. It was kind of,
it's a mark of respect. Yeah,
it was a mark of respect kind of thing.
And it's
we're
very
guaranteeing
much
his entrance into Valhalla.
As I said, it's that speech right at the beginning of it. I'm sure it's Gladiator. If you find yourself walking through green fields with the sun on your back, worry not, for you're already dead. It's that. It's, what is there to fear if death is wonderful? Which has throughout history been a way of psyching people up, especially in times of war and battle. Because there has to be something because it's human instinct to fear death.
Yeah,
of course it is.
And sometimes
so you have to override that.
And again, like it's a suggestion by Sun Tzu in The Art of War about putting your army on death ground, as he called it, meaning put them in a position where they've got to fight or die, and they're going to be way more motivated. And
it's the same one. It's the stories of the the Thebans.
Mm.
The idea that they sent men into battle with their lovers. Why? Because you wouldn't want to disgrace yourself in front of the person you love, and you will fight harder to defend them as well.
Just remind me again, Hissy, I may be wrong. Were Thebes the ones who finally took the Spartans on in open battle and beat them? Was it
Again,
Sacred Band, was that Thebes? Or
yeah, the Sacred Band of Thebes, yeah.
Yeah, they were like the first kind of like hoplite troops that were trained that could actually stand up to the Spartans. And again, we want to go into military tactics histories. Spartans had this kind of tradition of fighting on the right hand side of the line. There was some sort of tradition where you put your kind of weakest troops on the left. So
essentially, you'd always be turning
the Spartans were all. So it also makes you think that the Spartans' reputation was a little overblown if they were always fighting the weakest sides. And Thebes, let's just say Thebes changed the game just on that little thing alone. Again,
it was strategy versus brute strength, brains versus brawn, if you like.
Yeah.
But with the Spartans, you have the thing about the Spartans was their entire economy was based around creating a warrior class.
Yes.
You know, they captured slaves and they captured people and made them work for them so they could basically train for 8 hours a day. You know, and it's very much that sense of anyone's going to end up becoming good at something if you give them 10 hours a day every day to do it.
Yeah.
And the Spartans just took that concept on a citywide scale or city-state scale, if you like.
You know. Well, I'll say this about the Spartan agoge, the system that was used to. Let's just put it this way: I think even most modern-day special forces soldiers would cry for their mothers if they were exposed to the shit these boys had to go through.
Yeah, no, these boys, there were rites of passage that included being essentially driven towards people who were ready with a whip to attack them.
Yeah.
They were taught from a very young age not to have any fear of anything, and that the worst thing you could do was essentially run in fear.
Yeah.
It was not.
I mean, you think how brutal, like modern.
Said that barbaric.
I mean, let's take like you say a couple of like the most like most badass kind of units in like modern day warfare. Let's say the US Navy SEALs, or the British SAS. And if I was to tell you, I think even they would wince at some of the shit the Spartans had to go through. Well, I think as boys as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is because the SAS traditionally do a selection event by which they essentially drop the people going to join the SAS in the middle of the Brecon Beacons, which is a desolate, hilly area in the UK, and people routinely die on these selection events. It's pretty routine.
So I've heard. I don't know how much that's. I don't know how true that is.
It hits the news when they do. It hits the news when they die of exposure.
Yeah.
And it was more routinely in the past. So, it's not an easy thing. Now, the Spartans had their kids doing things similar to this at 15 and 16.
Yeah. I mean, they went...
and that was after 10 years of training.
Let's be clear that they went into this system at the age of 7.
Yeah.
The agoge, they started at the age of 7. So anyway, we're going off on another tangent, I think.
Another tangent.
But it's interesting because at least we do get some actual kind of history in so Cacofonix is an audience, and suddenly, and lo and behold, no more.
Stop, make it stop.
Yeah, stop. And he's like, what's that? And Asterix calls for an encore. Silence, please. Our Barb will now give you a medley of his recent hits. Oh, yeah. And they're like, no, please. Anything but that. It says, why not, mate? It says, the mere idea of hearing him again makes my knees knock and my teeth chatter. I'm in a cold sweat and my stomach is churning. In fact, it's just now you know the meaning of fear.
Yeah.
Asterix. So, and fear, you mean I'm frightened? We're all frightened. And then they're like, yes, we done it. We done it.
Yeah, so they've learned they now know fear.
And this is the weird thing now. He's like, thank you, whatever. Cacofonix, where do I come into this? I don't know what you're on about, but I do carry on my recital. I didn't want to break in the mood. And he says, and Asterix is like, doesn't matter. You've had a triumph, unprecedented success. I have, you know. And I love this one. If I had a slab of marble handy, I'd ask for your autograph, Cacofonix. Just for Kicks is telling Cacofonix.
No, not yours, autograph.
Yeah.
And then I do love this little completion of Just for Kicks' arc here.
Yeah.
So they're saying the goodbyes. Asterix is being nice and diplomatic.
Yeah, and
just had enough.
So it's kind of the chief in a way, but then he's like, so we'll have a farewell feast in your honor in true Norman fashion. He said, "Oh, don't was it? We'll slaughter you all and send you all to Valhalla." Very much kind of into what we were talking about earlier about different cultures here. The chief thinks he's doing Asterix a favor here.
Yeah. And then, I mean, this is interesting for a lot of reasons because I'm just, again, it's this, we were talking about fear of death and everything else.
Yeah.
And it's an honor now. And
Yeah.
again, historically, in a lot of different cultures, it's an honor to be what essentially reads like a religious, semi-religious sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be sent to dine with the gods.
Yeah.
And I mean, throughout history, we do see examples of that. We see examples where, you know, maybe because of the culture they're raised in or because of the way they understand it, people are not afraid to be sacrifices to particular deities or to approach death in that way. And again, it's all bound up in this, you know, what is fear? And again, it's that philosophical thing of, if you've been raised to believe that being killed to one of your gods or dying and going to your gods is the ultimate goal, can you really fear death? And again, this one, I like this one so much because it gets those philosophical cogs turning. And it is.
I do like it, yeah. But as we get back to this, and they said, yeah, this is the kind of finish of Just for Kicks. He's kind of had enough now. You see him, he's manning up, and he's just goes straight into the Norman chief's face. It's like, you've outstayed your welcome. Basically, like, piss off kind of thing. Asterix said, well, if he hasn't learned a bit of courage. Them and their conquest, we'll never hear the end of it. That's a Norman joke, obviously. There's been a few of them in this book. I mean, we went through a few of them last week.
So, and then we have they're now coming in for a fight, which is fun.
And
we have a page of Bish Bash Bosh, but this is interesting because we now they now know what fear is.
Yeah.
And they've realized that fear applies not just to the bard's music. They're frightened.
Yeah. But I will say, just to send them on their way, Cacofonix does send them a serenade as well, just on their way. And then they jump one by one, jump off the cliff as well. But yeah, they for the first time they get their ass kicked and realise this ain't really worth it.
Yeah, and I do love Cacofonix's choice of song there. Which is
Yeah.
Nice and interesting. I'm sure we all recognise it.
Oh, take a skull of kindness yet.
Yeah, and a lot of Cacofonix's songs in this have been quite punny and fun as well.
Yeah.
So do go back and have a look if you're going to read it.
Bear in mind, this was made in the 1960s, and so after the first ship, the Normans decide they're going to get back on the longship, going back to the north, get up, and it's like, and now there's a bit of a problem. They can't get anything done as well. So wants to get them up in the crow's nest. I'm too frightened to go up there on my own. Get out that master. He's like, and now they're all afraid of their own shadows, kind of thing.
Yeah, and again, this is another philosophical question that's posed of how much fear is too much fear.
Yeah.
And how much knowledge is too much knowledge. Can you know too much? And I think the conclusion this one comes to is most definitely a resounding yes.
Yeah.
You can know too much, and sometimes it's better to live in ignorance, is the theory. That is a philosophical debate, I think, for another time.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in you need to know what you need to know, but you also don't know sometimes what you need to know, which means learning things that you didn't necessarily, that aren't necessarily useful to you, but are part of the journey.
I like this. Sorry, I like this little name of the guy up in the process as well. Too clever by half.
Too clever by half. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that just comes out. I read that in such a Yorkshire accent when I read it.
I immediately kind of thought about that as being a kind of slightly Northern England kind of. He's too clever by half. That guy.
He's too clever by half. Him.
Now, our friends get to come back. They get their triumphant reception at the village. And now Obelix is taking just the kicks out to a bit of a hunting trip. So many other stars. The Bard is Cacofonix, and he's sort of get Asterix talks to Getafix, says Normans had the right idea when they learned in the affairs. It's only it's only when you know fear that you become truly brave. Courage lies in overcoming your fear.
So again, it's
that's the whole message. That's the message of this book.
It is, and it's a very deep message for a book aimed at what is it, like 7 to 10-year-olds?
Yeah, generally. I mean, and obviously we know that there is all the stuff that 7 to 10-year-olds are not going to get in this book as well that we can get, but. And
it is very clearly stated. Like, as adults, we've realised that this is the message of this book, halfway through it. But just in case the kids didn't quite catch it. And it again, it's an interesting philosophy to take up. Children's books do have a habit of it. And it is something that's more common in young adult literature and in children's adventure stories.
And I will say this, that in the next panel, the Normans did overcome their fear.
Yeah.
So they're still brave and book their tables in Valhalla at the expense of our pirate friends.
Yeah.
Gotta love it.
So, of course, because our pirate friends are just, poor blokes, I swear.
I've got to love this last panel. I really do. And I'm going to blow this last one up. As just the kicks his holiday and the bracing air of Armorica is over, a time has come for him to go home to Leticia village, just give him a splendid farewell. Banquet, and Cacofonix is invited, since after all, it's thanks to the Bard that all's ends well. Cacofonix gets to sing.
He gets to sing, which is nice.
And they're all and they're joined. They're letting it. And let's just say his biggest critic in the village, fully automatics,
gets a taste of his own medicine.
Yeah.
And of course, that's adorable.
The end. Doggo.
Doggo. I love the
Right, let's go. I'll get that off the stream now.
So
I mean, I just realised. I mean, I know we've had to do this in 2 parts. Obviously, because we aimed to do this in 1 part last week, and obviously we know what happened with YouTube. But I just realised, culminated here, we've done over 2.5 hours on this book.
yeah, and I think that says a lot, because normally we average about what, 1.5 to 2 hours per book.
Yeah, I think 2 hours is the most we've spent on a book before. Some we've got done through in just over an hour, but
Yeah,
which I think says that there's a lot in this book to break down.
There's a lot in it, and there's a lot of very deep discussions to be had that you can use this book as a jumping off point. And I will say, you know, if you ever get to the point where you're reading this book to kids, don't shy away from those discussions. This would be a perfect introduction to sort of the philosophy of what courage is for any kid. And it's very nicely done, and it's done in such a way that it is kid friendly. Because the you know the druid kind of does have a point. And it's, you know, again, it's all about learning and experience, and especially for the age group it's aimed at, it's a very educational story, but it's also fun, and that's the beauty of it. If you want to educate people, make it fun at any age.
Absolutely. And that applies not just to kids, that applies to adults. Make it interesting, make it fun. You want to educate people. I mean, it's probably nothing worse than just someone reading out a bunch of facts or whatever without giving you a hook to kind of grab you in.
And it's that, like, I mean, look at all the topics we've discussed just on this book. We've gone Vietnam, we've gone historical rebellions, we've looked at propaganda, we've looked at
ancient Chinese philosophy and Sun Tzu, you know.
We've looked at Sun Tzu. So there are ways, and we've done this throughout the series. It's led us off on different tangents and with different ideas. That's one thing. I know a lot of people have this problem. I know I had this problem at school, not having the freedom to just go off on those tangents. Let yourself enjoy the tangent. That's half of the learning, no matter where you're coming from. And I know I sound a bit like I'm lecturing.
Nerdy said earlier, never stray off tangent.
Absolutely, never stray off tangent. Follow it to the bitter end. You can always come back to where you were before.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for the purposes of time or whatever, there was times I had to bring it back to what was supposed to, the original topic, but those tangents were interesting, and if you probably find most conversations you ever have in this world, they'll start on one subject, you go off on tangents. That is conversation. That is basic conversation amongst human beings.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's the tangents that you'll remember. We'll sit here and we'll talk about, Asterix and everything else. But the real things we've been talking about in the story, we've been talking about Asterix and enjoying it. But we've been talking philosophy. We've been talking history. We've been talking music. Those are the things that you'll take away from this, I hope.
Yeah. I hope so. We hope in some way that people walk away with something from these. If they don't, we're just enjoying making them. So
I think, as with any story, the beauty is in what you take away from it. And I know I'm taking away a lot from these stories. And I'm kind of learning as I go as well. And it's nice to have someone to bounce off of. So all credit to Jeff.
Thank you.
And nice to know people are in the comments and engaging as well. In the comments, we see you making these, the little jokes, the little this, that. That, to me, makes this worthwhile doing, because people are listening and people are really enjoying it. Okay. If you enjoy it, it's not wasted time. No matter what you're supposed to be reading, you'll never find an academic who regrets chasing down that one random lead that just bothered them.
Yeah.
Because if nothing else, you get that completion of where your curiosity took you. So let yourself be curious. If your curiosity leads you to a ship, try not to be like the pirates.
Okay.
No. And there's no such, and this is the question I posed earlier. Can you know too much? Which is kind of halfway part of the philosophy of this story. And the truth is, personally, and this is a personal opinion, I don't think you can. You cannot know and understand too much, because you will always find use for it somewhere. There's no such thing as useless knowledge. Even if the only time you ever use it is it pops up in a pub quiz.
Well, generally, which is generally what I'm the encyclopedia of, is useless knowledge. That's how I view myself. I have no specific interest, I have no specific skill in any department, especially in things like science, philosophy. I may know a bit about history, I may know a bit about politics. Like a lot of people in, let's say, the community I'm in, is the sort of, should we say, atheist skeptic community. A lot of them are real big experts in sort of science or philosophy. I'm not really experts in either. I know bits and pieces. I can get by, I suppose. But I'm certainly no expert. I'm a bit better on history, but better. But I think I realised that sometimes when I've been on these things, that I've been able to absorb information and correct people and stuff which I know about, which is just I never thought would, even stuff that I knew that I never thought would ever come in useful at times.
Exactly, and it's one of those things. It's, the kid in school asking why they will ever need to understand how to extrapolate data. Well, and it is the skills you learn from it as well.
I'll just say this: I'm not a parent. Okay, I'm not a parent. I wouldn't even profess to tell parents how to raise the kids. But I know that whole thing can be really, really frustrating at times when your kid keeps asking you a question, very simple question. That's why.
Please don't put that flame out.
Yeah, don't. I can understand it's times where it's like you're not in the mood for it or whatever, but don't put that flame out and just say crap because, because I said so, end of, kind of whatever. Why? Okay, you may not know why. Well, maybe sit down with your kid, find out why together.
Yeah,
that can be good. And I'm saying, and I'm not a parent. I can't really, I can't, really good parenting advice. But I do think that question, the question I asked most of all when I was a kid, I got shut down the most on, and not necessarily from my parents, but from other adults, whatever it is, that question: why? Why does this work? Why does this happen this way? Why does
yeah, and if you don't know, don't be afraid to admit to your kids that you don't know either. A lot of people think that they should be all knowing to their kids. No, you shouldn't. And because all you'll do is break their hearts later when they learn that you're not.
Yeah, and a good answer is, I don't know. Well, let's sit down. Let's try and find out together. Is a good answer.
Always a great answer.
Anyway, Hissy, I just realized we're coming up for an hour and 40 minutes. I'm gonna have to draw this thing to an end soon, but I'll just say, is there anything you'd like to plug before we leave?
There's a couple of little bits and pieces. So, as I have been saying on other streams, which I am going to say here, the initial momentum for the Black Lives Matter movement has begun to wane a little bit this week, which is natural. It happens. We're in a 24-hour news cycle. But if you do have the funds, please do donate. There's bailout funds. There's plenty out there. Because this is something that's going to continue. And this is something, we are in a moment in history where you really can make a difference with the smallest actions, because everyone is making those smallest actions at the same time. And now is the time to stand up and be counted, even if that just means not buying a branded coffee and giving the money to a charity. I'm not asking anyone to go out and put their lives at risk. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't ask anyone to do that. But please just make your voice heard and help where you can. Because that for me is my current plug at the moment, because as I said, we are on a precipice of history. This is an unprecedented moment, and we cannot lose that momentum. That's what we need to keep going. And that's what's going to bring about real change.
I'd echo that sentiment entirely. But I will just say, is there anything of your own, like on your channel or Rings channel, you want to plug?
For things like that, I'm going to say, as always, check out Rings Media Musings when he's running. He's going midweek for that this week because it's been Father's Day.
I need to get with him on that, because I'm a little, because he said something about midweek that he's looking to do the Big Lebowski at some point, which I will definitely be a part of. And I've shown people on stream numerous times my certificate of ordination from the Church of Latter-day Dude. I just might need to get with him on that, just make sure he's not clashing with Dave's birthday stream next week. Perhaps
I'm sure he won't. I'm sure he'll plan that around that.
So we'll try and. Anything else? Sorry, anything else from yourself and Ring you want to plug before I do my big plug?
From myself, not so much. Just come and find us next week when we're doing the next book in the Asterix series over on my channel. So do come and find me.
Which will be Asterix the Legionary.
Asterix the Legionary, which is going to be fun because again we're back in my area of interest.
And do you want to know something, Hissy? I don't think I've read this book.
This one's going to be interesting because I haven't read it yet either.
I don't think and I've read a lot of the Asterix books in the past. I'm not sure I've read this one.
I will also point out as well, I did see there was a clip going around in a Facebook group of Asterix at the Olympics of the film, and it looked I kind of looked at it and thought it looked a bit like those stories of Formula One drivers getting into sort of season-long pitch battles. So we do have to do the films at some point as well. But it looks interesting. And as always, there's that. Now, I know Jeff is itching to plug himself.
There's something I do want to plug. And that is, I don't know how many fans of mine or people who watch my channel are fans of British indie music from the, say, 1990s, which isn't really my go-to. Most people know me to be more of a metalhead, but I do have someone who was pretty big in the British indie music scene in the late 80s, early 1990s. I have on Tuesday night, 8 p.m. UK time, I have got, he just confirmed with me today, so unless he pulls out the last minute, this is going ahead. I have Les Carter, aka Fruit Bat, from the band Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine, on my channel. He's also been a member of bands like Ferocious Dog as well. He's had a long career in music. I've been lucky enough to meet him in the past, get to know him a little bit, and I've been trying for a while to get him to come on my channel. And he should be coming on. I believe a friend of mine, Mark, should be co-hosting with me. So that's Tuesday night, 8 p.m. UK time. So
I'll be there for that. That sounds interesting.
Yep.
So that's going to be a bit of a blast from the past, and a fun time. So definitely check that out, folks. I'm not currently up to much on YouTube, but I am, as always, I have fan fiction I'm writing, and I'm quite active on Twitter. So if you want to see me in some of my epic rants about every topic I'm interested in, from politics to history to fandom to you name it. I talk about it on Twitter. If it's there and it's trending, I'll have something to say. And that should be, you know, you can always find me there. And everywhere else on the internet as well, which I'm sure you can find me if you have a look. My card's in my Twitter profile. And I am going to leave that there because I really want to go out on this high of Jeff got an interview. Jeff got an interview with someone, and I'm really excited for you.
I've had a few interviews in the past, but this is going to be a bit different, should we say, than what I'm used to.
Yeah. So it is a bit different. So
I mean,
do turn out.
Because most of the people I've interviewed in the past have been from within our own community, I mean, I've interviewed David Worley on my channel. I've had Dick Dawson from the Shields on my channel. A couple of times now, I've had Chris Shelton, former Scientologist, on my channel, and I am still looking to do something again with him at some point. Looking into the history of Scientology. It's just that's been put on the back. It's kind of been put on the back burner for the moment because I've got some other, other things in progress. There's a guy I'm hoping to get on who's a former white supremacist who now speaks out against that kind of thing. I'm hoping to get on as well. So I've got a few fires in the irons in the fire, sorry, rather. But yeah, I am very excited to get that to have Les some Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine coming on, and not a name that a lot of people now may know, but they were a pretty big deal in the UK in the early 90s. They had a few top 40 hits and played like main stage at Glastonbury, so.
For those who are not British, playing the main stage at Glastonbury is a big deal.
It's a very big deal, yeah.
It's kind of, it's the, hey, American.
If you're American, let's say it's like playing the main stage at Woodstock. Let's put that into some sort of contextualization. But I don't feel I need to, because most people I think around the world know Glastonbury's a pretty big deal. So okay, so I've been Jeff, aka Godless Scummer. I'm going to bring this stream to an end finally. This has been one of the longer ones, and bear in mind this is 2 parts we've spent on this book. So I'm almost in a way a little thankful for what YouTube did last week now, because that would have been a long old stream. But I shall sign off now. So I shall see you guys later.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, be careful.
Okay. Bye-bye.